It's horse beef. What's going on, everybody? Today I want to talk about the Jackson podcast once again in their little sit-down interview, or at least Bears sit-down interview, because Rampage Jackson wasn't involved in that one, with Khalil Roundtree, right? Because it's just, it's a weird fucking therapy session that I was not a big fan of, right? But they also commit the mortal sin of downplaying Jiri's performance. But before we get into that, I want to break the news, man. Breaking news! And I'm just kidding. I'm sure many of you guys have already heard of this news, that Muhammad Usman has withdrawn from his fight this weekend due to elevated levels of testosterone, which obviously puts in question his past fights, right? At least his last fight against Hamdi Abdel Wahab, right? That one should be looked at. And if Muhammad was working with elevated testosterone levels against Hamdi Abdel Wahab and doing shit like this, right? Goofball activities like that, man. Like, what the fuck? Like, how bad would he look off the testosterone? Oh, goodness, I could only imagine. But it's a bad look, obviously, right? When you consider Kamaru Usman and Muhammad Usman's father being some like corrupt pharmacist allegedly, and Usman showing all of the telltale signs of PED usage. Now you have Muhammad Usman popping, right? It's a bad look for the Usman family, I must say, right? I'm not being a hater here. I'm just telling it how it is, right? I have nothing against the Usman family, but where there's smoke, there's fire is all I'm saying right now. But let's move on to the interview between Bear and Khalil Roundtree.
Did you feel when you were throwing your power shots against him, like, I was critical about it in the recap as your friend, as a fan of fighting, in your fight against Jamal Hill, another former champion in Baku, you had this flow to you, this ease. It, like I said, it gave me this flashback of like an Anderson Silva type of fight, very loose, very, very stretchy in motion.
Now, first off, I just want to point out the part where he mentions that he's Khalil's friend, because that is a running theme in this interview, right? We all know, like, whenever you're around your friends, you're always reminding your friends that you're friends, right? At least that's me, man. Whenever I'm with my best buddy, we're just hanging out, I'm constantly letting him know, as your friend, man, as your friend, we're friends, right? That's just me. You know what I mean? So I can definitely relate to Bear on that one for sure. But the comparison to Anderson Silva, in what way is Khalil Roundtree's rigid-ass Muay Thai-centric style in any way comparable to Anderson Silva? That's just, as the kids would say, fucking glaze, and I will not stand for it. That's just a complete mischaracterization of the way Khalil fights.
I felt good. Rumors of you backstage at the fight. I have a lot of friends that fight. I have a lot of friends that work at the UFC. And we have a lot of friends in general here, Jackson Podcast, and Jackson the brand.
Once again, with the friends, dude, this man always has to remind everyone that he's got friends.
As your friend, you have a very strong mental grasp on friendships, and I say that as a friend, us as your fans, us as your friends.
Jackson the brand as well. He's got to throw the brand in there. It's just people like Bear, dude. I have a sneaking suspicion that when he says the word friend, he doesn't mean it in the same way that someone like myself or like any normal person would say friend. I think when he says friend, he means commodity, which would explain why he put out this interview essentially glazing this guy who's associated with his brand after losing 2 of his last 3 fights. And I get that Khalil Roundtree is a warrior, and this is not really a criticism on him, but I feel like this type of interview does not help him whatsoever. And we'll get into more points as to why I think that. But Khalil Roundtree, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy who needs that kind of support system around him. I feel like he needs someone to kick him in the ass, dude, because he has too many people around him telling him, hey, don't worry, man, you were winning the fight up until you lost. Don't worry about it. As if that's not how MMA works. Yes, you could be winning a fight, but the result is what matters. Harping on the fact that you were winning until you lost will do nothing to help Khalil, right? Because you could say the same thing with him against Alex Pereira as you could say against Jiri Prochazka. He was doing well until he wasn't. Well, clearly there is a problem that needs to be fixed there, right? But there's no mention of that from Bear. As his friend, by the way, which, a real friend would definitely give it to him more straight than he did in this interview here.
Yeah, I mean, you went 2.5 rounds with absolute just control, full control. The guy could not get you off your game, but seems like a few jabs here, a few jabs there, maybe one connect, and you get baited into these wars.
But now this is where I have real problems with the interview, especially on the part of the interviewer himself, Bear, because he's not representing accurately what Jiri did in the fight to cause what happened in the third round to happen. Even saying you were dominating for 2.5 rounds, that's just not the case, man. Khalil was dominating for 1.5 rounds. Halfway through round 2, Jiri started landing. The jab started landing, and let's not forget the investments he was making to the body throughout the fight. Even when he was wobbling around and tripping over his own feet, he was still landing those snappy front kicks to the body. He was landing a large number of them, and he was landing the jab. And as I said, halfway through round 2, you could see something changing by the end of round 2, to me at least, right? As an avid Jiri Prochazka watcher and a big fan of the guy, he's a great friend as well, man. Great friend of the horse beef brand as well. You could see clearly what Jiri did to break down Khalil. But Bear and Khalil himself, man, neither of them really give Jiri Prochazka the credit there. This entire interview, whenever they talk about that third round, they're like, you know what, man, just one punch. All it takes is one. But it wasn't one punch. It was a flurry of punches to the body. As I said, the investments early on with the snap kicks to the body, he was landing some punches to the body as well. But they're acting like Khalil was so perfect until halfway through the second round. But no, dude, no. Khalil was broken down just like he was broken down against Alex Pereira. As I said earlier, clearly there is something there, and they're not being honest about it. And that only harms Khalil Roundtree, in my opinion. Even describing it like Khalil was quote-unquote baited into a war, as if Jiri doesn't do that to everyone. Every one of Jiri Prochazka's fights, except for his 2 fights against Alex Pereira, because clearly Alex Pereira just has his number. Every one of Jiri Prochazka's fights turns out the same way because Jiri forces his opponent to fight his fight. Is he baiting everybody into it? No, dude. Everyone trains for Jiri, yet they still end up in the same position because Jiri is just better. I get that he does things strangely, right? I get that. He's unorthodox, right? Merab doesn't get the credit he deserves either after beating his opponents, right? His opponents just pretty much chalk it up to, man, his cardio's too good. But nah, there's something else that these guys are doing in the octagon that's forcing their opponents to break. But there's never any acknowledgement of it, and I don't really understand it.
I don't think that it was something that grew progressively where he finally started to figure me out and then get the best of me. I think that it really was just a matter of 1 or 2 punches that it was going well until it wasn't. And
now, I hate to say it, man, but this is just a delusional take on the fight for Khalil Roundtree. This is a lack of accountability. He's saying that he doesn't think it's a thing that grew and it was just a matter of 1 or 2 punches. Man, as I said earlier, it was a flurry of punches. It was the non-stop onslaught from the beginning of round 3, which was just the crescendo. As I said, investments to the body early on. Khalil Roundtree is known as a fighter who tends to fade. He is. Of course, Jiri Prochazka. And the work that Jiri Prochazka was doing with his unorthodox movements, man, he had Khalil mixed up to the point where he was swinging those big looping shots about midway through round 2 and he started whiffing. What, that wasn't contributing to you fading in the fight and becoming vulnerable and pretty much a walking punching bag? Yes, that was. And it's the reason why I have a problem with this interview is because I like Khalil Roundtree. I do. I get excited for every Khalil Roundtree fight. He seems like a good, genuine, down-to-earth person, and there's no reason to have hatred for Khalil Roundtree whatsoever, man. He's the type of fighter that you want to root for. But these delusional therapy sessions just aren't it.
You have plenty of time to figure it out. You have plenty of time to get to where you want to be, which is, I know, a world champion. You've said it many times, and I don't think there's a single person who follows MMA that doesn't believe you're not world champion caliber fighter. I think that you have everything it takes to be a world champion. It's just everybody has a different path of getting there.
He's 35 years old. He doesn't have a lot of time. And in my opinion, no, he isn't championship caliber. And that's okay, man. Not every fighter is meant to be a champion, right? There's so few champions in UFC history compared to overall fighters for a very good reason, right? That is the tippy top of the game. Not everyone is supposed to make it there. And I believe Khalil made it about as far as he was ever going to. And I believe that he actually surpassed his potential, at least his perceived potential early on in his career. I'm very, very much proud of how far Khalil has came, right? Early losses to guys like Ion Kutalaba, right? Johnny Walker, this and that. And to come back and put on all-timer wars against Alex Pereira and Jiri Prochazka like that. Dude, Khalil Roundtree is the man whether he becomes champion or not, is all I'm trying to say here. But telling Khalil Roundtree that he has all the time in the world and everything, it's just not the case, man, especially when you add on the fact that he's taken a whole lot of damage in his last few fights.
At 12 o'clock in the afternoon on fight day, Saturday, October 4th, Merab sparred 5 rounds in the cage, live, on the day of his fight.
I wanted to include that little snippet there because that's just insanity. I've never heard of a fighter sparring 5 rounds on the day of his fight, dude. Merab really is just a different breed. You see the clips of him in the club after that 5-round war with Corey Sandhagen as well, man. It's just insane. Merab has some like serious energy that I've never seen before. He comes across as like the main character in life, like chosen one type shit, man. The man is blessed with something.
Because you wanted blood. You did not want this sensei martial artist looking, flowing with water fight. You wanted to go in there and just dismantle this guy. Do you feel that, or is that just me as a fight fan?
I don't want this to come across as me hating on Khalil Roundtree, because this is very much the opposite. This is more me hating on Bear because of some of these just really, really softball questions that he's asking his friend, obviously. So maybe you'd expect some softball questions. But this idea that Khalil Roundtree is this ultra technical fighter who goes in there flowing like water, man, he throws big looping punches and he throws big kicks. That is what Khalil does. He plots forward. He's very rigid in his style. And dude, it's fucking insane that people are trying to paint Khalil Roundtree and like sell him wolf tickets, as Nick Diaz would say, man. Because with Khalil's attributes and his style, he should be on the front foot. But he kind of plays on the back foot nowadays and just waits and he waits and he waits. And then he starts slinging his big punches, right? And maybe that's the reason why Khalil Roundtree has been approaching fights in that way. Because he has his good friend Bear in his ear talking about, man, you're flowing like water out there, man. No, he doesn't. That's not how Khalil fights. He is not a flow state fighter. He whips big shots and that's why he's fun to watch. He's not this ultra technical Leon Edwards. Like, yeah, you would think he fought like Leon Edwards based on how Bear describes him, but he's never fought like that. Even against Jamal Hill, yeah, he was a little bit more reserved, but it was far from the most technical performance I've ever seen in my life. It's just that Jamal Hill is not very good, at least anymore, right? There was a time when Jamal Hill was knocking dudes out left, right, and center, but he's been coming into his fights recently with a little bit of that gut going on, and he just doesn't really look like he's all in on this shit anymore. But that does conclude my thoughts on the interview. I just wanted to shed some light on the lack of acknowledgement given towards Jiri and the awesome performance that he put on. Yeah, the first 2 rounds he didn't look very good, but to pull that off in the third is nothing short of spectacular, and I think Jiri should be given all of the credit in the world for what he did to turn the fight around the way that he did and to make his own luck, because it seems like Bear and Khalil, they're just boiling it down to a couple of, hey, I landed a punch and then, you know what I mean, the fight was going well until it wasn't. No, man. Jiri makes his own luck. The fact that Jiri is able to do that to top-ranked UFC fighters consistently time over time shows that there's method to his madness, and he's not just getting lucky, and it's not just one punch. No. Jiri knows what he's doing, and he broke you, and that's all. And I think it would do Khalil Roundtree a lot of good to just acknowledge the fact that he was broken in there. He was broken down, and that's it. Stop focusing on the fact that you did well. No, what matters is the result of the fight. And you got finished brutally once again. And it cannot be understated of how exploitable Khalil is in there against top fighters who put on pressure. Dude, he's so exploitable with that gas tank, right? With his tendency to wilt under pressure. And especially as we get past the second round. And I believe that Khalil will continue to be exploited against top contenders unless he's honest with himself, man. That's really all it comes down to. Because like I said, I enjoy Khalil. I like Khalil. There's no reason to root against Khalil. But as I said all throughout this video, the last thing he needs is to be quote-unquote glazed by his quote-unquote friends after another devastating loss like that. It's just not what he needs, man. At least that's my opinion. I'm not a professional fighter, so I could be wrong. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. If you agree, you disagree, whatever your thoughts are surrounding the interview between Khalil Roundtree and Bear, your thoughts surrounding the fights, just whatever your thoughts are in general, let me know in the comment section below. And as always, guys, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you on the next one.